Hey guys, welcome back. With the progression that we're seeing in Infinite's multiplayer story through Season 2 and 3, a very interesting concept, kind of showed itself to me. It was introduced, and that was an AI taking control of a human mind. Well, join me this week, as we do a little bit of a midweek special. We're going to take a look at the feasibility of that. Is it possible that an AI can take control of a human mind in our world? To really understand that, though, we first need to take a look at how humans interface with AIs to understand the vector on which an AI would attack. Now, see, humans in the UNSC, they use neural interfaces. However, not all can actually work with AIs, but that might not stop an AI from attacking you. See, at a base level, these interfaces typically allow for individuals to quickly confirm identifying each other as friendly or not. It acts as an IFF, a friendly or foe identification in combat environments. It emits radio frequencies that, at least according to lore, can penetrate some obstacles like maybe a debris field by no more than a meter or two of rock. When we talk about advanced positions, though, like those in command, like Admiral Hood in Halo 2's Anniversary, or in Spartans, they have an enhanced interface. Not too much detail on this, but we do know the command links don't appear to have the ability to host an AI. There's no, slot typically visible. But because they're referred to separately as command links, it makes me think that, maybe they can interface wirelessly with battle tracking software. I mean, that would make sense. If you're commanding a ship, I would probably, it'd be really nice to be able to see everything that's happening kind of in your mind's eye. Spartans, though, we do know that their interfaces are different. They do allow them to interface with AIs, at least some of them, like Master Chief is frankly one of the rare Spartan 2s that had that ability, depending on if their suits were modified and how late in the human Covenant war they were. But this is also what leads to what we see in Halo Infinite. The unique thing about this relationship is that AIs can operate inside the mind of a Spartan, but they can also operate within their armor, sometimes at the same time. Now this, can really enhance them. It was to an extent played off in the Halo TV show, God forbid, where Cortana is able to kind of take control of his suit. Yes, it is a TV show, but that concept has been discussed before in the lore that, when we talk about like Spartan 4s and stuff like that, AIs being able to help them, work with their suit versus just controlling it through their own mind. But while Spartans can override an intrusive AI, being mentally vulnerable or allowing their suits to be vulnerable does make this difficult. And why I say that is that, the ability for an AI to interface directly with a Spartan's mind, well, that can lead to a lot of issues, just like, frankly, what we see in Halo Infinite. To catch people up with, you maybe haven't played Infinite or haven't been keeping up with, the story, the multiplayer arc at least, which pains me to say because I'm a huge stan for campaign DLC and that looks like it's dead. But the multiplayer story arc does follow the player character and the Spartan 4 named Din. Now, Din decides to capture a banished AI, Iratus, by inserting it into his head, so to speak. The AI then invades his mind. We don't really see it messing with his armor, not originally in Season 2 and whatnot, but Season 3 shows us that Iratus is kind of making Din go through a lot, particularly relive his memories. This is obviously very traumatic for Din, It also meant that the banished AI was learning a lot about him and to an extent humanity. But fortunately, through our grand feats of strength and throwing BTB matches, Iratus, as he's called, was eventually forced out of Din's mind. Sort of. It's not exactly clear. He kind of just wakes up and they really don't talk about hey, we isolated him or you're good to go. It's just cool, that happened. But that brings us to the most recent video, and that's Din and the player once again exploring an old Oni storage room underneath the academy where Iratus somehow, maybe potentially by latently sitting in Din's neural interface, gains access to the facility and activates it, particularly a suit of spy armor. And the scene ends with that suit of armor starting to move without an operator, controlled solely by the banished AI. And like I mentioned earlier, they can operate in the mind, but also in the suit alone. Now granted, this is 100% just 343's way of bringing back infection without having to use the word flood, because obviously if you say the word flood, you get an M rating and God forbid that happens. Now the big takeaway here is that obviously this adds a lot of depth to the danger of a rogue AI. We know from Infinite's intro scene that obviously this was a concern because the Mark 7 armor worn by Chief was hardened against exactly that. And in the case of Din, the AI wasn't able to control his body overtly, although potentially he may have been sedated, like after it became clear what was going on, but we do know it was clearly able to control his mind, at least intrusively invade it and see his memories. With time, he was also showing how to control armor. A combination of those two obviously could be catastrophic. I mean, imagine your best asset, Spartans, being invaded by a rogue AI and being compelled to commit acts against their will, like, I don't know, blue on blue, friendly on friendly shootings. It's not really talked about much that I can remember. Obviously, it was hit on a lot more in like the Halo 5 environment, but this would really be a prime vector to attack Spartans in the cyber realm, especially because it seems that their interfaces do emit constantly and can transfer data without the operator potentially noticing. It's my theory that Iratus was able to take control of the facility as we see in the cutscene because maybe he, piggybacked off of the IFF signal to backdoor, so to speak, into the spy suit of armor, or maybe the computer equipment nearby. This is a great example, my friends, on why you should probably not bring Bluetooth or wireless devices into particularly sensitive facilities. Now, that being said, is it even physically possible for something like that to really happen? I mean, I'm talking about the modern world. I'm not talking about in Halo. Could our minds actually be controlled? Well, it's an interesting topic because a lot of people have looked into it, some with more or less than noble intentions. The short answer, in my opinion, is yes, hypothetically. Allow me to explain. Most see our brains as biological and therefore somehow not capable of interfacing with technology, but that frankly to me would be false. Our neurons still use electricity to communicate at a very basic level. I know also the YouTube neuroscientists are going to jump down my throat, but honestly, I've always seen us as biological machines, but the fundamental concept between us and a computer is just not that different. An AI with an adequately dense neural network, I'm talking like the number of connections having similar number as a human brain, should be entirely capable of experiencing the world just as we do. It also means that properly interfaced electromechanical system can work with the brain, and we know that's possible because in kind of like very comparable to what neural interfaces that we see in Halo. Obviously Elon Musk, Neuralink, if you've ever heard of it, that's what they're doing, right? If he can make a monkey play ping pong with its mind, and he's talking about making paraplegics be able to walk again, then we're obviously making progress in that realm in the modern world. And frankly, maybe it's only a matter of time before we have something similar to Halo. And that sounds fantastic, but it also means if it can interface with our mind, it's probably only a matter of time for it to be used for the wrong reasons. To understand why I say this, allow me to discuss what mind control might look like in the people who typically have looked into it, that being the CIA and probably the KGB. Not necessarily your favorite friends. When the CIA comes knocking, it's probably a bad day. But they explore things like hypnosis, which, yes, that makes people more or less susceptible to suggestion, but not really to do something you wouldn't normally do. At least that's how I understand it. You can't hypnotize someone to commit murder, even though obviously we see that in the movies and stuff. Now, they also tried stuff like dosing soldiers with LSD, which, yes, it'll make you trip balls and have a blast, but that's because it's not really making you do so much as it kind of disrupts what's happening in your head. It's really hard to function, especially as a soldier, when you're disassociating and having a full blown out conversation with a houseplant. Now, if you took what we discussed earlier, you're going to start to see how an AI could very, very, very effectively target an individual. What we're seeing in Infinite with Spartan Den is what I would say is a very overt brute force attack. The AI is not trying to hide itself. He's like just getting in there deep, so to speak. But what happens if an AI simply, maybe slightly altered some of your memories? Would you notice? It's hard, right? Because we experience life from one perspective, but you're thinking back and you're like, oh, 100% I remember this exactly happening. Have you ever had that happen to you? Well, now imagine you have an AI that you don't know is there, and it is subtly kind of changing what you think may have happened in the past, or doing things like modifying just slightly how you respond to stimuli. Instead of reacting to a situation like you normally would, maybe you react as the AI and likely its controller would like you to act. Maybe this is why, so many in the AI field are saying it's dangerous, because we're already getting to a point where they're becoming more competent and capable than us today. And we're also simultaneously giving them more vectors to sway our life, our opinions on social media, but straight up, digging into our heads. And maybe it's not too long before we all end up being put into pods that act like batteries. Well, on that sober note, that's it for this week. I've got some more time on my hands, so expect more videos and, more potentially different topics. Now, I will warn you, this is not me branching out from Halo. It's still going to be Halo, but there's a lot of cool topics out there, and I kind of, have had an itch to explore some of those more weird stuff. And hey, maybe it'll be interesting too. In the meantime, stay safe, keep grinding. The weekend is not too far away. I'll see you guys again on Friday.